Good afternoon. I know I'm the last presentation of the day, so I think I'll try and stick to my 20 minutes. Just a few words about me, and then we'll move on. So I obviously work for Shell International out of, I suppose, Aberdeen or Rijswijk in Europe. My title is 4D Program Manager, which basically means I look after, well, it's a 3D model where we combine it with time for construction sequencing. But also I look after 5D, which is where we blend it with materials for Workface Planning, which we're going to come on to in a minute. And 6D, which is cost, 7D, which is what you've just been seeing with Total, which is the use of 3D models in operations and pushing that technology into the operational space. Okay, but today really I'm here to talk about FearTech and in particular the AIM project, which stands for Advanced Work Packaging Information Mapping, which, to tell the truth, there's no fancy video, sorry. Okay, so it is just slides. But to the truth, you could almost determine it as slightly boring, but it's the boring bit that makes the other bit interesting. If you don't do the sort of like your groundwork, then what you'll find is the rest of it doesn't work, and you quickly get into black holes of cost of, well, it was a great idea at the time, but we can't make it work because you didn't actually do your homework at the beginning and do the mapping and understand really the true complexities of the mapping as we have it at the moment. Here we go. So FearTech, so this is for Ray, this slide. So FearTech was born out of CII back in 2001. Shell's been a member for the last year. We came to the 2013 show last year in San Antonio, and we will be at the show this year in California. So really, FearTech was always described to me as the D of R&D. So CII is very much about research, and Shell's a big member of research in CII. And FearTech is very much about the development of that research and making it possible. So there's lots of great projects there, and it is a great environment for owner operators, EPCs, suppliers, to actually talk in a more of an industry forum rather than particular projects and get into contractual terms. So it's a very great environment for collaboration. There we go. Okay, AIM project. So the AIM project really is about how can we move forward with advanced work packaging as laid out by CII and really move those benefits into immediate and tangible benefits and actually making it reliable. So making it consistent that we see the same results time and time again. I think you'll see in the next minute, the slides we've got to show you is that at the moment we're not seeing a consistent approach to workplace planning. Participants are great, us, Shell, Dow, Chevron from the owner's side, ConstructX, Aviva, FearTech, Hatch, Zachary, Jacobs and Bentley, Baton Beach, University of Texas, and others. But we've got a great team. We've met back in January, just recently, in the Aviva shop in Houston. And actually, it's a good working team that we meet every Friday from around the world. Okay, the motivation for this. CII produced a reference subject called RT272, if you know this space, and they actually did an analysis, a lot of coming from Canada, that showed that they could increase productivity on a construction site by 25%. Now, a lot of that was around actually just getting rid of waste time. People looking for materials, people looking for materials and then can't start a piece of work, going back to the site huts to find the next piece of work, and generally just wasting time. So they reckon they could increase this productivity by 25%, and then reduce also the total installed cost of 4 to 10%. And from a Shell perspective, and from an owner perspective, really, I suppose, that and you've seen that several times this last couple of days about costs. We've kind of reached a plateau where we can't continue the cost cycle. It's going up too much, and people want to use the technology in order to bring the costs down. Okay. That is the biggest driver for it. How can we level out with the cost and even start bringing it back the way? Okay? The safety benefits for us, if we plan the job and we work the plan, therefore it's a safer environment to work with. So we move away from a kind of a macho culture where it's we just all roll your sleeves up, get on with the job, start work fronts which you aren't properly prepared for. As soon as you start work fronts you're not prepared for because maybe you're driven by material availability, you put people at risk. And with the kind of like connection, I suppose all things internet connectivity, we should be able to, we have the technology to start linking the materials management systems with the construction sequencing system, the schedule, to actually really plan the job a lot better, way back in the design process, so it becomes a lot simpler how we put the plant together. However, the big barrier is data provisioning. We don't all work in one system, we don't all work in one office, we don't all work in one country, so it's a difficult area. So this is where we roughly are at the moment. These next two slides are typical of where we are at the moment. So most projects do-ish kind of mandate workface planning, and they may say, company would like you to do 4D planning, and that's it. It's one line, which can mean a massive amount of work. It can get ignored, and or it could be like someone can jump on it, and it could be that company's hobby horse, how they would like to develop it, and it could become $1 million money pit. So it's not product defined, it's one line item. Then normally they'll go off and find a tool, so they go to the market and find some tools and see what they can do. Some companies now, the EPC market, do have their preferred tools in this space, but a few years ago it's very much go to the market, find a tool that can do this. But then they normally forget that about the poor IM people and the information requirements, and they go off and get a tool, think they can push a 3D model into it, which is an engineering model, not a constructability model, and they quickly get themselves in a bit of quicksand really about how to actually map all this information together. And the results are that everything gets printed to paper, and they then try and do everything in a paper-based workface planning system, which, to be fair, in turnaround projects or shutdown projects, if you're from Europe, that works. We've worked in that way for, I think, the last 20 years since I've worked in that space, where we print everything to paper, we produce lovely work packs. But if you work on a greenfield mega project, it's just not possible to print that much paper. It's also not possible to manage that amount of change from engineering, which is in a state of flux, to producing work packs which are reliable in the paper mode. Paper's never going to go away, but it's how long can you go to before you need to print the paper? Okay, so that's very much a suboptimal. It's probably never going to work. It's just going to cost you an awful lot of money. The next one is very much you mandate with your contractors advanced work packaging with some sort of technology. So you put a bit more blurb in the ITTs. You specify an automation tool. So you think, okay, I've cracked it, I've got the tool. But again, you don't really specify the project data deliverables. So it's what am I trying to map together? Is it just progress in the 4D model, i.e. the plan and the schedule to the model? Is it materials? Okay, where are we getting the materials from? Is it one single repository of material management systems, or is it several from the different EPCs you're working with? And then again, the bulks from the fabricators as well, so it gets very complicated. So it's very difficult to actually figure this piece out. And then normally what happens is you miss your target, and you don't get success. I think, yes. And again, you can't, even if you get to the end of this and you manage to build work packages, you probably can't manage the amount of change you're going to see. So again, it's not going to be well received. What AIM tries to do is specify exactly in contractual terms advanced work packaging and the data requirements and deliverables. We're starting to look at the people and the work processes we need to tweak, technology aligned with advanced work packaging. So that's very much driving 3D models along the path of construction, which basically means following the automobile sort of world and the aeronautical world, where we actually figure out they're actually designing something to be built. Okay, we're also designing something to be operated, but first of all, we've got to build it. And at the moment, we don't design to build things. We design to operate. And certainly all the handover from a shell owner-operator point of view is how do we hand over data for operating? We forget this crucial phase in the middle of how we're actually going to build it. So this is what we're certainly looking at now, of how we can change some of those, tweak some of those work processes to change the 3D design to path of construction. Also consolidated and validated bill of materials, material takeoff. So I think we recognise that, certainly in Shell, we recognise that we have multiple sources of materials from our EPCs and from our subcontractors. But how can we bring that all together in one we don't want to purchase on other people's behalf. We don't want people to purchase through our system. That's another wrong turn. But it's how do we put something over the top, but it's almost like an Amazon that sits over the top that the EPC's material management system feeds up into and gives us that information. That repository becomes the link to the Workface Planning. And then from that, work packs remain agile, synced with engineering visions. So basically we accept there is change in engineering. How can we keep that change live and let the design process take its path? But we can still work on the constructability and the sequencing in parallel to the design, I think, yes. So this is AWS reliant with improved productivity, predictability and safety. Obviously we're driving, safety is a strange one really, because from a Shell perspective, safety is our number one aim. But obviously this is all about cost and schedule, but a safer site with a better managed view on life is a better managed site is by far a safer site. And as I said, if you stop the unscheduled work driven by material availability, which is where we live today, then we're definitely going to save hurting people and even save lives. So the phase one objectives, which we're sort of just coming to the end of this year, was certainly to develop some contractual language between the owner-operators and the EPCs that we could all understand. It's not legalized, it's layman's terms, so we can give it to our contracts people, they can understand it, and then they can convert it into legal terms. So that's going very well for the contractual side. And then we've taken some analysis, in particular the structural detailing or structural system workflow, to actually work that and actually to figure out the organizational boundaries. And you'll see in the slides in a minute. The idea is that we produce similar slides, we identify the boundaries that we have to pass data across to the various people. We specify those, and we specify flow diagrams to help the EPC and the owner operators to understand and to map out exactly where data has to flow. Okay, so a pretty picture there. I think that's the only pretty picture. So there you go. So phase one focus on structural steel, end to end. So you can see here that we've already changed. So we have path of construction. Now I know I'm actually, it's quite nice this week. I'm actually an instrument man by trade. So that's data, big data generally. But my structural colleagues generally do design things to build things. Okay, that's they understand they have to have structure, they have foundations, and it all kind of links together. The process world is very much process and pipe, and then give it to the poor structural people to try and figure out how they can support it and access information. But so structural was tackled as the probably easiest one to start looking at from a beginning. So there's path of construction. Underneath we have the teams, the resources that actually do the work, and above the line it's the activities. So path of construction, structural analysis, scheduling, structural detailing, fabrication, work package development, site materials management, that's quite important, and then quality tracking, EVR, and then turnover to obviously the owner operators. The project scenario looks at very much the owner and one EPC. We don't try and complicate things, but the reality is you normally deal with several EPCs and an EPCM and a PMC in that space. But generally an EPC may have maybe 3 or 4 steel fabricator yards. It's probably got several pipe fabricators. It's probably got a third-party logistic company it works with, civil contractor, mechanical contractor, electrical contractor. So just on one recent job that we looked at, although we had 3 or 4 major EPCs, we had like a quilt where we only had one civil contractor that actually worked for all those EPCs. So we didn't have 3 people digging up roads. It was still only one company, but they're driven by different EPCs and obviously different demand. Steel fabrication and pipe fabrication is a tricky one because obviously we're moving into a lot more modularization, but those module yards are supplied by those fabricators. Generally module yards are another point of assembly moving forward. But we only use one logistics company. That's the key thing of moving all our stuff around. But if you know from if you live in this world, you know that if you've booked a boat, a ship, a barge to pick up a module in a year's time, that boat will arrive in a year's time. If that module's not finished, it's shipping on that day. the great thing what we're trying to move forward is like, okay, so I accept that is the point of truth. But what I need to know is what carryover scope am I going to receive on site? So I can color code a 3D model to actually clearly identify what carryover scope is sitting in containers on that barge as well. Up to now, it was a bit of a surprise when it arrived on site unfinished. And then, of course, the site manufacturing mechanical contractor, he hasn't put hours in his schedule to finish someone else's job. Now we can see it well ahead of time that whether we're going to complete that or not. So the project scenario, so we've mapped this as a kind of high-level application silos. So owner-operators normally start with 3D models in concept select and feed, and then hand that across to the EPC who then matures it, maybe in collaboration in feed or maybe in execution phase. It really hands over to him then. So he's obviously doing the structural analysis with those specialist tools, feeding into his 3D design. He's estimating obviously the materials, scheduling the ordering and all the purchasing and all the fabrication, the procurement of those items, tracking, packages, etc. Then the fabricator is obviously doing the structural detailing and actually the steel fab. Third-party logistics, there's down the bottom, logistics tracking, vendor portal, giving us all the visibility of where that items is. I mean, it's still very much, we talk about RFIDs, and we're not here to talk about RFIDs at the moment, but we would like a view of you could track anything anywhere, but you kind of really now, at the moment, the best way of working is like a DHL system, a FedEx, where every time it goes through a gate, it gets dinked with the barcode, and that registers in their central computer of where it last was. The poor mechanical subcontractor on site, he's got to basically do the workface planning, quantity tracking, site material management systems, and the QA/QC. So he's kind of the man at the end there. But these are all very much silos. They all have their own data, and how do you pass this data between us? So what the boys have done in AIM is they've come up with, for this structural, and there's 14 data exchanges between all those different sets of people, or data scenarios, not just one data exchange. And that's a flow of information between all those different parties. It's not a once-off handover of data. It's a constant flow of data. We work out there's 14 of those. And what we've done is, the next 3 slides, we've actually taken the top 3, and we're working those at the moment. But the plan is that we move from structural into piping. We document all these flows. So we build up a FIATech pack that actually goes together with the contractual terms and conditions that an EPC or an owner-operator can use to develop their understanding. Okay, so here's one from Bill of Materials. So you have the EPC, he's done his 3D CAD. Now, that normally gets passed down to the structural detailing guy. Now, traditionally, he would then maybe do that in AutoCAD or MicroStation in 2D form. And then that's it. He produces those shop drawings to his shop or to his next subcontractor, and they would actually go and build those items. But what we're now wanting to do is now for him to actually use the 3D model to do those structural detailing, produce the drawing straight out of the 3D model, but also pass that information back to the 3D model. So it's like a copy, pass it back to the 3D model. So if we ever want to build one of those items again, we know exactly how the piece marks are, and we can then move forward with our replication sort of vision as well. The 3D model then can get shared, obviously, down through Workface Planning with the those tools. So you get a 3D view. It can then, obviously, you can do your quantity tracking or for your progress. You can then check your materials management system on site. So is those piece marks actually on site yet? So therefore that links to the Workface Planning. And then the guys can do the QA/QC. So where is it installed? Is it installed yet? Is it finished? Is it handed over? Another one is obviously logistics we talked about earlier. So obviously EPC is going to buy most of the gear for us. He's going to then have that feeding down to the site materials management system, which almost definitely will be another party of people. It won't be the EPC. Who's going to then obviously manage all those site stores and actually the allocation of materials to the work crews. So that's very much where Workface Planning really starts paying dividends. We see the biggest return there is that the guy doing the work packs, he will build the virtual work pack, he will check that against the materials in store, and he will either give it a green tick that the guy can go and move forward with that work pack, or he can hold it back because it's not incomplete. We may decide to move forward with an incomplete work pack, but at least we know exactly what scope is there or what materials are there or not there. So we see that as a great aim of people not wandering around looking for materials or starting jobs or opening up work fronts just driven by materials management. So it's very much, we don't deploy people to site until there's actually the work that we can get, open up the work fronts according to the plan. The logistic people kind of sit in the middle, so they understand obviously what is going to be ordered, where it's being fabricated, and then they can feed that through their portal and their tracking systems to make sure it can be picked up by the boats, lorries or trains. Trucks, sorry. Lorry's an English word. I think the last one is really roll-up of progress. So this is something else that we see that's of great interest to us, ultimately the people that are paying, is how far through the system are we, how many work packs have been completed, and obviously we want to get to a point that we can pay by the work pack. That's another sort of floated idea out there at the moment. So we don't get work packs that are only 90% complete, but there's still the 10%, the difficult part left to do, which they can easily mount up, which then results in scaffolding on FPSOs, which causes a bit of a problem. So we can actually drill right down into that subcontractor's workface planning, exactly what's finished, what's left to do. And certainly when you get into the nitty-gritty at the end, the last 20%, last 15%, where you're almost definitely waiting on materials and trying to finish the job off against a very tight deadline, against wanting to get the first oil, against the commissioning people that want to swap across to systemization from construction areas, you're under immense pressure at that point. So you really need a clear, high-level view of where you are, but the ability to drill down. So it's a case of that work can all go down on in the bottom at the level 5, but it can roll up to the higher level schedules of where you're actually completing. So quantity tracking and then obviously checked against the schedule. At the moment, this generally is just done by Primavera on thousands of lines. Unless you're the planner and the project manager, you've probably got no idea of how much scope you've got left to go. Where the 60 dimension comes in, but the cost is we should be able to, if we can start tying all these pieces of data together, we should be able to not only quantify how much work there's left to do, but also how much money there is left to spend and pay out for the various people, sub-teams, and also do we demobilize early? Do we mobilize? So when we're trying, the EPCs may have another job they want to mobilize their people onto, so we have to either make sure we keep the right people on site, the right skills on site. Do we keep too many people? And it's all those kind of things. If you have a trapped workforce, you have to pay for them, so you have to make sure that they are meaningfully engaged. I think that's it. There's one more slide, which is a sales pitch for FearTech. This year's is March 31st to April the 2nd. Vision 2020, so that's value today, advancing tomorrow. Advanced work packaging has 6 hours directed to it. I think we got 40 presentations. It certainly was a great show last year, and various presentations from all the people at the bottom. So it's well worth a visit. If you don't know FearTech, please look them up on the web or speak to Ray, and he'll tell you all about FearTech. And that's me. Thank you.